We'll start recording now. So please have this in mind. We are recording this session. Okay. Now we have the definitions of the audio-lingual method. The theory behind this method is that learning a language means learning habits. The new language is heard and drilled repeatedly before it is seen in its written form. They focus on listening. Also, we have the theory behind this method is that second language learning is similar to how we learn our first language. And we call this the direct method. And the third method focuses on helping learners to communicate well and appropriately in different real-life situations. And if it is different real situations and communications, it must be the communicative approach. Okay? And finally, the grammar translation that depends mainly on translating grammar rules into the first language, the mother tongue. If you looked at this picture, you can see a teacher giving the students information, explaining to them. So if I ask you, what do you think the teacher following here? What approach is she applying? Is she applying the direct method or communicative language approach, or it is the grammar translation, or what?
Direct, I think direct, Mr. Mustafa.
And why do you think it's the direct method? Why do you think so?
Because the concentration here is on the teacher. Learners are not discussing or not sharing with the teacher.
But in direct method, we apply the same technique of learning the first language with young babies.
Yes. So this is not direct.
It's not direct because here the teacher is taking. Is it the audio? How do you know that?
I think it's grammar translation. Maybe.
Yeah.
I think
When you
grammar.
When you have a teacher talking to the students and the students are just listening to the teacher, it is called the grammar translation. It's the idea of someone is talking and the other people are listening.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes, yes.
But if I give you another picture and I ask the students to look at the two pictures and ask me a question or make a sentence, or I give them questions and they give me answers. Here we have a different approach.
Direct method?
Direct.
It could be the direct method or the communicative method that mainly depends on communication. So
I think
it's
that's
not
direct method.
And why do you think it is direct method here?
Because students here are involved in the event. They are involved in the picture and in the event. They can compare the two pictures and conclude the result or the grammar the teacher want to tell them about.
Okay, and the things you said just now apply to direct method or communicative approach. When students are involved in making questions and answering questions and talking to each other,
Communicate.
we are focusing on communication. Okay, communication means we have a language situation and the students talk, react, ask, role play. Okay, so it is the communicative. We
Communicate.
also
Excuse me,
talked
Mr.
last time. Okay,
Can you explain the direct method again, please? As
the
I don't
direct
understand
method.
it.
Okay, the direct method is the same as the natural way young children learn their mother tongue. Here we are in Egypt. When we have a young child, they usually don't speak, but they listen to their parents, their moms and daddies talking, and they suddenly start copying what their parents say and their brothers and sisters, their family, and they start producing the language. In the same way, we apply this approach in our classrooms. We let students listen and listen again and listen until they learn about the language. And later they start talking. This is called direct method. It is the
The same way
same,
acquire language.
yes, the same way young children acquire their mother tongue, their first language.
Yes.
Okay, so it is called
Okay.
direct method or natural method. Is that
Yes.
right?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's clear now. So,
Okay, we have two important words to learn about, two different approaches.
yeah.
One of them
Deductive,
is
inductive.
called deductive and the other one inductive. So if you are following the deductive approach, it means that there is very little explanation done by the learners. It's quite teacher centered. When the teacher does most of the
Im-
work, the presentation, the explanation, the practice, the training, this is called deductive. Students are just listening to the teacher. But in inductive method or approach, it is focused on learners. And the teacher are asking learners questions and asking them to talk and give answers, solutions, expectations. So it is a learner based technique. So we have two techniques that quite different to each other. One of them focus on teacher teaching student, and here we have students learning by communicating or by sharing. Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
let's read the definition. In the deductive approach, there is very little exploration done by the learners. You know what this sentence means? It means
Yes.
that learners are not active. They are just receiving what the
Waiting for the
teacher.
teacher to explain and do and give them information.
Excellent. So it is called teacher centered. Teacher centered. Okay? Some learners really do prefer it. Some learners prefer this way, Why do you think some learners prefer it? Because they are just receiving, they are not exerting efforts. Maybe because they are more familiar with it, or sometimes because it is less work for them. You know, when students sit
More
in their desks and seats comfortably and just listening for the teachers doing the whole thing, do you think learners will prefer and like this or not? Most learners will like this, especially the slow and weak learners. Okay?
Also, I think shy learners.
And also shy learners. Okay? But do you think this approach, the deductive one, will be the best way of teaching all different students,
No.
all
no
various
at all.
types of learners? It's not recommended for them, but it's an effective way of teaching slow learners. Okay, so if we have very weak learners and we need to help them learn, we can start with this approach, the deductive one. And when they get to know more about the language and they have become active learner, we can move from deductive to inductive. Okay? And what is inductive approach to teaching? On the other hand, it involves asking learners to work to discover language. Have you noticed the difference?
Yeah.
Here, learners are asked to work and they are asked to discover language. It's not a spoon feeding technique. Here, it's a digging technique for the learners to do. It's a hard challenge for them to do. So the teacher doesn't give direct information or direct language to the learners, but ask them to think, to discover, to work, to make decisions, and they learn through this process. So it's more beneficial for learners who already have a base in the language. Have you noticed the word base in the language?
Yes.
If the learners
Previous
are,
information.
yes, are good enough, they can make the best use of the inductive technique. So we have two strategies, two approaches. One of them might be suitable for slow learners or weak learners, and the other one for the clever students or the smart, intelligent learners. Okay? Last time we talked about the definition of inductive and deductive, and we have shown the difference. And I ask you to look at this picture. If the teacher in the picture here is asking students, is this correct or not? Is this formal or informal? And why did you use that tense? Check your answer with your partner. All these types of questions apply to one of the techniques we were talking about. Do you think it is referring to deductive or inductive? Can you remember this?
Inductive.
Those.
Inductive. Why do you think it is referring to inductive technique? It is inductive.
All the
Because
students share with the teacher.
Yes, because the teacher is not giving direct information. The lesson is not a teacher-centered. There is questions that need to be answered by the learners themselves. And through answering such questions, they can discover the language. So it is called inductive. Is it clear?
yeah.
Okay. So if we talked about the difference between deductive and inductive, the letter I represents inductive, the letter D, deductive. So which one of them is learner-centered?
Inductive.
And which one
Inductive.
is teacher-dependent or centered?
Deductive.
Deductive.
If we follow the approach of problem solving,
Inductive.
if we teach learners
Inductive way.
rules first,
Deductive.
if the students or the learners were passive,
Deductive.
and if they were active,
Inductive.
Inductive.
if they learn consciously, it means if we give them the direct information, the present perfect tense has two words, have plus the past participle. This is called the conscious learning. This is called the deductive. And if the students learn by using subconscious, they discover the language through answering questions and through thinking. This is called inductive. Okay?
Okay.
Now I want you to listen to 4 teachers. They are talking about their ways, their methods, their approaches to teaching grammar. Here they are talking about teaching grammar. As you listen,
1.
You
please,
don't really need to teach grammar
just a
explicitly.
minute. Have you heard this, the voice of the audio?
For a
Not, it
second, but
wasn't too good.
Yes, but you heard it just for a second, okay. I want you to listen, and while listening, try to write down the main ideas of each approach,
1.
You don't really need to teach grammar
whether you
explicitly,
think it is
saying things like,
inductive or
this is the
deductive,
past
and
perfect, and you
your
form it
opinion
like
about
this.
it.
That's
Okay?
Yeah.
Was the voice clear?
yeah.
Okay, let's get
Okay.
started. What happened?
One.
You don't really need to teach grammar explicitly, saying things like, this is the past perfect, and you form it like this. That's unnecessary. Learners will pick it up for themselves. If they want more grammar, the teacher can give them exercises to do outside class, but don't waste precious class time teaching it. I think it's better to teach learners to communicate, to practice as much as possible in class with real language. Grammar will look after itself.
2. I always look over a new unit in a book and then teach my learners the grammar rule before we even begin the unit. I explain the rules that are going to come up and then do some exercises with the class. That really helps them to be clear about what the unit is about, and they can do the activities in the unit better. I think they learn better that way.
3. Whatever you teach, you have to include fun in it, even if it is grammar. I believe teachers should somehow link it with real-life situations. Experiencing is the best way of learning, so it must be something visual and oral. The more concrete it is, the better the result will be. The thing is, the learner should link the language with a real experience.
4. I think grammar should always be practiced in context. Using tasks that develop the 4 skills, learners should be working with meaning so that they produce the structure freely before moving on to the next grammar structure. After the task-based activities, you can follow on with an analysis of the structure used and try to elicit the form and use from the learners.
Okay, have you listened to these 4 teachers talking about their approaches of teaching grammar?
Yeah.
Okay, have you decided whether it is inductive or deductive, each one of them?
One inductive, 2 deductive.
You don't really need.
Okay, 1 deductive and 2
1
inductive.
I think that 1 inductive and 2 deductive, 3, 4 are
Inductive, 2 deductive.
Okay, so now we are confused about whether it is deductive or inductive. Okay, would you like to listen to them talking about these approaches again? Would you like me to play the audio again?
Yes, yes, Mr. Mustafa, please.
Yes, yes.
Okay, try to listen again.
Please mute the voice, please.
Noise, please, Mustafa.
Yes.
Mustafa, please, making some noise. Can't hear the voice.
You can't hear the voice.
No, we can't.
Okay, that's maybe because I muted everyone.
Maybe.
So please unmute yourself and tell me if you could listen. Have you listened?
No,
No,
Yeah.
I
No.
can't listen.
me.
All of you.
I can't hear.
Hey, let's try once more. And you haven't listened again.
No, Mr. Mustafa.
Okay. Something wrong happened. I don't know what it is. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And anyway, I'm going to give you the audio in Google Classroom to listen and decide whether it is inductive or deductive. Here you can read the text of each teacher and the feedback about it. Can you read this?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Approach to grammar.
Teacher number 1 talked about her approach of teaching grammar. She said, you don't really need to teach grammar explicitly. The word explicitly means indirect and very clear way. You know that most teachers in Egypt, at least we haven't met teachers from other countries to know about this, but we're talking about teachers in Egypt.
Yeah.
They start telling the students the rule like this. المضارع المستمر بيبقى فيه am و is و are وبعديها الفيرب فيه ing. ودي حاجة بتكون بتحصل دلوقتي. يعني مثلا لما نقول she is reading a story, it means that she is reading the story at the time of speaking. فديت بيسموها explicitness. انا مش بدي فرصه للطالب ان هو يفكر في اي حاجه، انا اللي بديله كل حاجه. فهي الست ديت بتقول يا جماعه ما فيش داعي ان احنا نعمل ده. You don't really need to teach grammar explicitly, saying things like this is the past perfect and you form it like this. خدت بالكم من المثال اللي هي بتقوله؟
Yes.
بتقول ان الطريقه دي unnecessary. Learners will pick it up for themselves. سيبهم هم. هيكتشفوا الحاجات دي بنفسهم. If they want more grammar, the teacher can give them exercises to do outside class. But don't waste precious class time teaching it. هي بتقول ان الوقت بتاع الفصل ده وقت ثمين جدا، ما فيش داعي ان احنا نقعد نضيعه ان احنا نقول لهم المضارع التام بيتكون من كذا وبيجي معاه كلمه كذا ويعمل كذا. I think it's better to teach learners to communicate, to practice as much as possible in class with real language. Grammar will look after itself. يعني الحته الاخيره ديت بتقول ان الجرامر هيجي لوحده، ما تقلقوش. اهم حاجه ان احنا نعلمهم الكوميونيكيشن. تفتكروا الابروتش ده ينطبق عليه deductive ولا inductive؟
Inductive, of course.
ها؟ inductive كلنا متفقين تماما كده، الصوره اتضحت. اهو بيقول كده the teacher uses an inductive approach. She feels that it's important not to directly teach grammar. هنا كلمة directly teach grammar اللي هي بتساوي ايه بقى في الكلام بتاعها فوق؟ explicitly. كويس؟ She prefers to teach them communication skills. فعلا لو الأولاد اتعلموا how to communicate, how to speak, how to listen, how to solve the problems, how to make decisions, how to negotiate things، كده هو خلاص بقى اللغة معاه. طب افرض هو عمل أخطاء في الجرامر يعني، مفيش مشكلة. بس هيبقى مشكلة الامتحان. ازاي يا مستر؟ ازاي انت مفيش مشكلة؟
Yes, I was really going to talk about this point.
Yes, I agree with you. عشان كده we need to change the mentality of the students, and at the same time we need to change the rubric of the exam. We should not be focusing on grammar orientation.
Mustafa, I completely agree with her, with teacher number one, because this is more perfect, because this is more beautiful.
Mm.
When the student is able to talk and give a meaningful sentence, and he's able to speak and express himself clearly, this is very, very good. But when it
Yes,
comes to exams and
that's
marks and so
there
on,
is
parents will make problems.
yes. Okay, let's go to teacher 2. Who would like to read teacher 2?
If any colleague wants, okay.
Okay,
If,
Yes, can I read?
okay, okay.
go ahead.
Teacher 2. I always look over a new unit in a book and then teach my learners the grammar rule before we even begin the unit. I
Mhm.
explain the rules that are going to come up and then do some exercises with the class that really help.
That
Helps.
really helps them to be clear about what the unit is
Really
about.
help.
Okay, go ahead.
Excuse me, mister. That really helps them to clear about what the unit is about and they can do the activities in the unit better. I think they learn better that way. That
Yeah.
way.
Okay, what do you think this approach is? It inductive or deductive?
I think that it's deductive.
Excellent. Here,
Deductive.
teacher has a very led approach to grammar, a deductive approach. He explains rules before starting the unit so they can understand better. Okay, let's go to teacher number 3. Who wants to read this?
Okay, Mr. Mustafa.
Okay,
Whatever you teach, you have to include fun in it, even if it's even if it is grammar. I believe teachers should somehow link it with real life situations. Experiencing is the best way of learning, so it must be something visual and oral. The more concrete it is, the better the result would be. The thing is, the learner should link the language with a real experience.
okay, and what do you think of this approach? Let's have a look at the feedback here. Is it possible to use real life situations and fun? I'm so sorry.
No
Real
problem.
life situations and fun context for deductive teaching? It is possible, but usually a deductive approach is more centered on rules outside of the context. Think about your grammar reference books. لو رحنا للجرامر ريفرنس بوكس هتلاقي دايما الرول بيبقى عطاها لك بشكل مباشر كده في بوكس كده. التنس ده بيتكون من هنا الادجكتيف بتستخدم بالطريقه الفلانيه، ده اسمه ديدكتيف. لو حضرتك حبيت تطبق عليه التيتشر نمبر 3 بيقول عايزين ندخل الفن، تبقى responsibility of the teacher how to include fun and real life situations in deductive teaching. يعني انا هعمل modification في الابروach بحيث ان هو بدل ما هيبقى just rules directly and explicitly, I'm going to add fun and real life situations. Okay, let's go to teacher number 4. Who would like to share?
Okay, can read.
Okay,
I can read.
Uh, Okay, read.
Okay, go ahead.
Um, okay, I think grammar should always be practiced in context using tasks that develop the four skills.
Yes.
Learners should be working with meaning so that they produce the structure freely before passing on to the next grammar structure. After the task-based activities, you can follow on with an analysis of the structure used and try to elicit the form and use from the learners.
Excellent. What do you think the teacher number 4 following? Is it deductive or inductive?
Inductive.
Is it inductive approach? Because they are talking about learning through context,
Text.
working with meaning and task-based activities and eliciting all these things refer to inductive approach. Okay?
Okay.
We have checked the answers together. Now we are going to move to another important part of our tag today. It's the different lesson planning model.
Mhm.
When you are in your classroom and you want to explain something, you need to present something, okay? You can apply one of 6 different techniques or approaches. Here we are talking about the abbreviations, the first letters of each approach, PPP or TBL or TTT or GPR, LA and GD. All these letters represent models or approaches of teaching.
Mhm.
They are called teaching strategies. We need to know about them and how can they be applied and what are the pros and cons of each of them. مش كل التكنيكس دي هتبقى مناسبة لكل أنواع الشرح. We need to understand about them and apply what makes it better from our points of view as teachers. كل واحد فينا هيحط البصمة بتاعته. I think I can explain this through or by using this type of strategy. The letters P, 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 it represents, have you heard about this approach before? The 3 P's, it represents presentation, practice, production. Presentation, practice, production. Okay? So we have P, P, P. And the TBL, it is called task-based learning. TBL, it is task-based learning. And the TTT, it is called test, teach, test. Okay, so the presentation starts by testing students and then teaching them and then testing them again. And TPR, it is called total physical response. Total physical response. Okay, let's go back again. And also we have lexical approach. Lexical, Do you know the word lexical? What does it mean? Lexical. You know,
Meaning,
meaning, vocabulary,
vocabulary.
words. When something relating to vocabulary and the meaning of words, it is called lexical. So we have approach, which is called lexical approach. And finally, we have guided discovery, GD. So I want to ask you a question. Is it important for me as a teacher of English to know about these letters and the words they represent? Or if I don't know about them, there is no problem at all. If I ask you the question in other words, is it important to know about the terms, or it's much better to apply them in classrooms?
We have to know all the,
So do you think it's important to know about them and apply them as well?
yes, we can use different ways in our class.
Okay, but if I don't know PPP, it stands for presentation practice production.
I can do it without knowing it.
Excellent. And that's exactly what I mean. So
Yes.
some teachers don't know about these letters and words, these approaches, but they apply them in their classroom and they apply them perfectly. So the point here is that to learn about them, it's okay, but it's much better to practice them, to apply them, to implement. Okay, let's talk about the first one. We have a pyramid. We have a pyramid, and each part of the pyramid has the letter P, and they are divided maybe equally. P, P, P. Not exactly equal. The first P represents presentation. The second one, practice, and the last one,
Production.
And they are put in the pyramid form in order to show the importance and also the order. A teacher who wants to apply this model or strategy, he or she should start by presenting the language and then making students practice the language and finally help students to produce the language. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. And who is going to do the first P? The first P in the pyramids here. Who do you think will do it? Hello?
Yes, Mr. Mustafa. I think warm up.
I'm sorry. As for the roles, in the first part of the pyramid, we have the presentation. Who is going to do the presentation?
A and C.
Is a teacher?
The teacher?
Teacher.
Yes. Teacher? It's the teacher. And the second P, what do you think? Who is going to practice the language?
The learners.
Learners individually. And when it comes to production,
So
who do
learners.
you expect?
Learners also.
Also the students, the learners. So teacher, students, and students are going to apply the PPP model. So I want you to read each sentence or phrase here and decide whether it
Presentation, practice, or
is
production.
part of presentation or practice
Practice.
or production, okay? Can you do this in
Yes.
30 seconds?
Yeah. Control, guide, practice. Yes, practice, target. Independent practice. Pronunciation. Use class levels. Yes, Mr. Mustafa.
Okay,
Presentation, of course, warm up.
yes, I agree with you. When it comes to warming up, we are at the presentation stage. It's okay.
Um, Presentation also, we have number D, teacher highlights, meaning, form, and the
Form
pronunciation.
and pronunciation. Okay, I agree.
Um,
Let's
practice,
sit
we
together.
have, then we move to practice.
Where is practice?
Actual presentation. Is this with us, or this is something we don't have to do with number
Yes, we
B,
have
presentation?
actual presentation. Yes, it is part of
Presentation.
presentation.
So we move to practice,
Yes,
controlled and guided practice. Students practice the target language, controlled activities, focusing on
accuracy. Do you mean this relating
yes,
to the stage
related to practice,
practice?
and also
And
free independent
let's
practice.
try to personalize the language and use it in a less controlled activity, focusing on fluency.
This is production?
Yes, I
Yes,
think.
Yes,
let's
production.
okay. Let's
Production.
have a look at the answer. We need to decide whether what we expected was right or not.
Warm up, action, checking understanding, old students, free independent practice, teacher highlights meeting.
I think the same answers, just like you said. I think
Yeah.
so. At the
Mhm.
presentation stage, we need to do a warm up and presenting the information or the language and checking understanding and highlighting meaning, form, and pronunciation.
I think
Okay?
checking, understanding it,
جبنا نشرب.
the the end of the section, for example, um, after the practice and the production.
Uh, you mean checking here means testing, you
Yes.
know? You ask students to here the idea of checking understanding here means to make sure that I as a teacher succeeded in presenting the information and the students understood what I wanted them to understand.
Okay.
So this is called checking understand. I make sure that I succeeded in doing my job. I don't mean checking means testing the students. Okay.
Okay.
And at the stage of practice, we have controlled and guided. What do we mean by controlled or guided practice?
Practice that the teacher give the students to answer. For example, practice questions or a task they give them after explaining the lesson.
And the word controlled or guided, it means that the teacher helps the students. The teacher is helping them. Is that right?
Yeah.
Something controlled. I don't make the students do the practice stage alone.
Yeah.
It happens under my control. Okay, to make sure that they are practicing the right way. And then when we go to production, I give them freedom. Have you noticed the word free practice? So we have two different types of practice. When we want to help students and control the process, this is called control or guided practice. But if now I'm okay, I'm my students got
يلا خلص هات 5.
the idea, I give them the
طب يلا
free.
هات لي اللي اشربه.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So at presentation, we have input. The teacher builds context and elicits, highlights meaning, form, and pronunciation. It takes about 15 minutes. Have you noticed the time distribution? الهرم مش متوزع بالتساوي، ملاحظين ان الجزء اللي فوق صغير واللي تحت منه اكبر شويه واللي تحت اكتر. ف they give the most of the time to practice and production. But when it comes to presentation, you need to be, yes, very short, just 15 minutes. And I think most teachers in Egypt do the opposite. معظمنا بيعمل العكس.
Yes,
بناخده
it's only short
بناخده
time.
من اولها، عشان
We
كده
only
بنيجي على اخر النهار مش قادرين نقف على رجلينا.
ده الحقيقي. This is
الضمير
احنا
ده.
عندنا اعتقاد ان انا كل ما هفضل اشرح يقول لك يعني المستر ده بصراحه يا جماعه في منتهى الاخلاص، طول الحصه عمال يتكلم. حضرتك لا، اتكلم وقت قليل، بعد كده خليهم هم يشتغلوا الوقت الاطول. طيب stage in PPP model. I want you to read and decide what you read is relevant to which P of the three. Is it the presentation, the practice, or the production? Okay?
okay.
Can you think about it?
Removing gaps.
Have you finished that?
Yeah,
Okay. We still have three other.
Chronological and chronological
يلا
stage.
الحق. طب
Activities can be
ما هو مش
used,
هيجيب هنا.
including
It's okay with this. Okay, we have another three. Now we'll have the answers.
Mm.
Okay. When I practice and drill the sentence orally before writing it on the board, or positive, negative question, and short answers, this is called presentation. Is that right?
I practice and
And during the stage of the lesson, it is important to correct phonological and grammatical mistakes. There are numerous activities which can be used for this stage, including gap filling exercises, substitution, drills, substitution drills, sentence transformation, split sentence, picture dictations, plus questionnaires, reordering sentences and matching sentences to picture. All these types of exercises, it goes to practice stage. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
yes.
Yes.
Okay. And here the production stage.
I would do to try to personalize the lesson on the stage, even students with questions from next events.
It is important to monitor and make a note of any errors so that they can build in class feedback and error analysis at the end of the lesson. I try to take notes of the mistakes my students and the errors. What are the pros and cons of the PP model? When we talk about pros and cons, it doesn't mean that this method is good or bad. But what we need to be focusing on is that, is it good to use it in a particular situation or not? تفرق كتير. احنا مش بنحكم يا جماعة على ان الطريقة دي مناسبة ولا غير مناسبة. هي ممكن تكون مناسبة في حالة وممكن تكون مش مناسبة في حالة أخرى.
Yes, it's
كويس؟
not.
And when we learn about different strategies, the main idea is not to choose one of them. احنا مش بنعمل كده عشان نختار واحدة منهم وهي دي اللي احنا نطبقها. لا طبعا. We can apply many strategies, but in different learning situations, in different teaching situations. So when we talk about PPP is usually a deductive approach. طب هل معنى ان هي deductive يعني وحشة؟
No.
هي من ضمن المساوئ بتاعتها انها ممكن تبقى deductive، بس ممكن كونها deductive ممكن تنفعني مع طلبة معينة. ان انا اعمل لهم برزنتيشن الاول. اصل انا لو شغلتهم يا مستر زي انت ما بتقول كده واسئله وخليت الفصل بتاعي كوميونيكاتيف والله ما هينطقوا. انا عارف مستوى الطلبه بتوعي. طب عايز حضرتك تعمل ايه؟ اديهم حته كده في الاول 10 دقائق. ما هو ده البي بي بي اللي هو بيسمح لك ب 15 minutes to present. خدت بالكم يا جماعه؟
Yes, Mr.
طب افرض انا لقيت الطلبه بتوعي من العيال اللي هم الشاطره الصواريخ بتوع المدارس الاجنبيه والدنيا كده، ممكن تغير الاستراتيجي وتخش على حاجه تانية مثلا اللي هو التاسك بيست ليرنينج، اخليهم يشتغلوا على طول وهم يعملوا لك ويستنتجوا هم بقى ويحلوا هم ومش عارف. فديت بقى راجع عليك انت كمدرس، لان المدرس عنده ذكاء رهيب ان هو بيقدر يفهم الطلبه بتوعه بعد يومين ثلاثه من التعامل كده ويشوف ايه اللي يناسبهم. بس بلاش تبقى انت الجراما ترانسليشن تيتشر اللي هو التيتشر سنتر. انا ببقى مبسوط قوي بنفسي وانا علمت.
I can say that this is due to the abilities of the learners, and the teacher should have into his attention put into his attention the individual differences.
اكشن. متفقين كده يا جماعه؟ الكلام بتاع المستر كده في الصميم. احنا لابد ان احنا نفهم the different types of learners the multiple intelligences ذكاءاتهم المتعددة and the way they like to learn and the level, the age, the background. في حاجات كتير جدا، المرحلة العمرية، الثقافة بتاعتهم، الخلفية اللي هم جايين منها، أوضاعهم الاجتماعية، كل ده يأثر في عملية التعلم. وأنا كل ما هكون مدرس واعي أو ذكي هقدر أو لا أبص لا الطريقة دي لا هتبقى صعبة عليهم أوي، طب خليها بعدين ممكن وممكن أثناء ما أنا شغال بالطريقة اللي هي فيها الديدكتيف دي جاي في نص كده ورحت واجي قالب على الاندكتيف واقول لهم طب مين يقدر يفكر لي في دي؟ طب مين يقدر يقول لي هو ليه هنا البطل في القصه دي اتصرف بالطريقه دي؟ طب ما انا كده رحت قالب على الاندكتيف. فاهم الفكره؟ it all depends. متروكه لك. المدرس يا جماعه جزء موهبه، جزء منه الموهبه، وجزء اخر بقى اللي احنا بنعمله دلوقتي اللي هي الميثودولوجي. يا جماعه في ناس علماء وناس مثقفين وناس خبراء قالوا الطرق دي حلوه، طب ورينا يا عم الطرق الحلوه. انا الموهبه بتاعتي هتبدا تقرر لا دي تنفع مع الفصل بتاع رابعه اول، العيال دول صواريخ، بس مش هتنفع مع رابعه تاني خالص، او على الاقل دلوقتي. فاهمين قصدي؟ ادي لان احنا دلوقتي يا جماعه طول عمرنا بنسمع كلمه طرق التدريس، ان ده كلام دش، كلام تربوي. خد بالك؟ لا احنا عايزين نحوله الى واقع جوه الفصل. طب هيتحول الى واقع ازاي؟ حضرتك انت اللي عندك الموهبه، انت اللي تقدر تحكم زي المستر ما قال دلوقتي، اشوف الطلبه بتوعي الانديفيدوال ديفرنسز، الانتليجنس بتاعهم، الايج، ماشي، الباك جراوند، الكالتشر، ماشي كده. ده احيانا المود بتاع اليوم، يعني ممكن تلاقي طالب قدامك حالته صعبه، عنده ظروف، مامته تعبانه ولا حاجه. طيب تعالوا نشوفوا السكويرز اللي قدام حضراتكم دي اصلا مكتوب فيها sentence about benefits and drawbacks. عايزين نشوف هي تبع البنفيتس الحاجات المفيده ولا تبع الدروباكس بسرعه، علشان هو هيبدا يحط الاجابات هنا اوتوماتيكلي دلوقتي. اقرا كل عباره منهم وشوف هي تبقى تبع البنفيتس ولا تبع العيوب اللي هي الدروباكس.
I think the first one is the benefit.
ماشي.
Language structures tend to be isolated and a natural drawback.
Okay.
Teacher-led, not learner-centered benefits.
يعني من ضمن عيوبها ان المدرس هو اللي بيعمل كل حاجه والطلاب ما لهمش اي لازمه في حاجه، دي شايفاها benefits.
Drawback of course.
Drawbacks.
قريها تاني كده.
Yes. Drawback, not learner-centered.
ماشي، روح للي بعديها.
بس هي learner-centered لان في الاكتر وقت بياخدوا في البرودكشن.
ماشي، بس انا بقول لك not learners.
Drawback of course. Learners know what to expect.
Benefit.
شايفين البنفيت؟ يعني الطالب لما يبقى عارف القصه هيبقى فيها ايه. طب ما هو ده الملل بعينه. يعني الفيلم ده انا متفرج عليه 7 مرات قبل كده، ايه البنفيتس اللي في كده؟
Yes.
ده بالعكس، ده انا عايز اخلي الستودنت يبقوا دايما يعني waiting for the unexpected to be said.
Eager.
Boring.
They find it predictable and boring. Teachers feel comfortable they have taught material.
بصوا بقى اللي احنا كنا بنحكي فيه بالعربي دلوقتي اهو مكتوب قدامكم اهو. بصوا ال PPP is more suitable for lower level learners. يبقى احنا مش بنرفضها كطريقه، لا هي موجوده كطريقه بس خليها مع الطلبه التعبانين قوي. طب اشمعنى الطلبه التعبانين قوي؟ قال لك the benefits for the teacher are that it is an easy approach to set up formulaic and highly structured. بتدي فرصه للمدرس ان هو يعرض الحاجه للاولاد وتبقى كل حاجه متنظمه. Teachers also feel confident. المدرس بيبقى عارف هو واقف على ارض صلبه، يعني هو خلص ايه وفاضل له ايه وعامل ايه، هو اللي متحكم، عشان كده بيبقى دايما واثق confident that they have done their job. She presented the language to all the learners, although this does not mean that all the learners understand or are able to use it. The drawbacks are that it is a top-down approach. عارفين يعني ايه top-down؟
No.
يعني التيتشر واقف فوق على الممبر.
Oh yeah.
والطلبه قاعدين تحت.
Yes, 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 yes.
هو هرم بقى. التيتشر led and predictable. فخلاص بقى وعرفنا بقى الخطوات اللي جايه هتبقى ايه وكده. فهي بقول لك من ضمن عيبها الملل بس. Some learners may find this approach boring, too passive, and switch off. switch off مقصود بيها ان هو بيخلي الطالب يفصل. ما عندوش حته بقى التشوق والانجيجمنت اللي هو الايجرنس ان انا ابقى مستني اشوف المدرس هيعمل ايه وكده. خلاص الخطوات اتحفظت. يعني هو المستر هيشرح الحته دي وبعد كده ادينا مثال وبعد كده احنا نحل.
This is very true, Mr. Mustafa.
ايوه بس ده مش معناه ان احنا نرفضها يا جماعه، عشان في بعض الناس متخيلين ايه الاستراتيجيز ديت يعني يا ناخدها يا ما ناخدهاش. لا بالعكس، زي ما قلت
Sometimes we...
لحضرتك الظروف هي اللي هتحكم.
Yeah.
طيب النوع الثاني اسمه TBL. The abbreviation here represents task-based learning. الستيجز بتاعت التي بي ال في مرحله بري تاسك، تاسك سايكل، لانجوج فوكس. تفتكروا ايه اللي مطلوب من المدرس يعمله قبل ما يقول للطلبه اعملوا كذا؟ ايه الحاجه اللي هتبقى بري تاسك؟
explaining the lesson well.
maybe اللي هي فكره ان هو to help them know about the lesson.
ask them to make a brainstorming about the task.
Okay.
Maybe ask them to read first and get information about the task.
But before I ask my students to do a particular task, I need to help them learn about what they are asked to do. What are the roles expected them to do? This is called...
He can write title for the topic and ask the pupils what they predict the topic about. They can draw a picture. They can write a sentence. They can. Everyone can get an idea about what he imagined about the topic.
Yes, but don't go too deep with giving the students a lot of information because they have tasks to do. I want them to give them just introduction to the topic and the task. Okay? This is called pre-task. And what about task cycle?
The task itself.
Yes.
Planning.
Can work.
Here, during the task itself, the task cycle, students will start doing the task together in groups, and they are planning to answer and talk about the task and give report. At the final stage, the teacher focus on particular language areas. يعني هنبدا بالبري تاسك ان انا اديهم to give them just introduction، بعد كده اسيبهم هم يعملوا التاسك، وديت هتشمل التاسك سايكل ديت هيبقى فيها عباره عن 3 stages: doing the task, planning and reporting. لان الاولاد هيبقوا متقسمين الى جروبس، وكل واحد فيهم هيقوم يشرح للباقيين هو عمل ايه وكده هيدي ريبورت. بعد ما بيخلصوا التو ستيجز دول بيجي دور المعلم تاني بقى ان هو يعمل اناليسيس ويعمل براكتس لبعض اللانجوج فوكس. في حاجات معينه عايز اركز عليها. Okay.
Excuse me, Mr.
Yes.
So what when we speak about this, we have to put in our mind the huge numbers in classes. And for me, for example, I have 120 pupils in grade 1, grade 4. I have about 100 pupils. How can I apply these approaches with the large numbers?
Okay, I think the answer of this question goes back to you as a teacher. You are gifted and talented to decide. كنا لسه بنتكلم من شويه، احنا بنعرض افكار طرق تدريس. مين بقى اللي هيحدد دي تنفع ولا ما تنفعش ودي تتقال ولا ما تتقالش؟ هو حضرتك. بس بلاش فكره ايه ان احنا نخلي ال 100 طالب دولت هم السبب في ان احنا مش عارفين نعمل اي حاجه جوه لا هنعمل.
Excuse me, Mr. Mustafa.
Yes.
I think the previous tag or the first tag we have taken,
Yes.
we talked about what are the benefits and the positive things in great numbers and big number of students. Does if you have a class and your class have a big number, does it have any positive thing or it always negative? We tackled this thing together, and some of us said may no. Sometimes when you have a big number, sometimes have a positive thing.
Just
because
like
you have a lot of you have different characters of students. You see different abilities, different answers. If you give a question, they can give different answers. So
okay.
Some of our colleagues said this is positive, and I agreed with him.
Okay, but I don't agree much on this because having 120 students in one class, especially if they were in grade 1, it's a disaster. It's a catastrophe.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't agree with him completely.
Yes, I work as a supervisor. If you know this,
Yes.
and I remember 2 years ago, a teacher, a lady, asked me to visit her in primary 1.
Yeah.
Okay, and she had about 70 young learners. And when she started doing her presentation, every 5 seconds, a boy or a girl of the class asks her for something. Miss.
Interrupted her.
Yes. Toilet, please. Miss, can I eat my sandwich? Miss, he hits me. Miss,
I lost something.
I can't find my pencil.
Yeah,
So,
it really happens with me now. Mister, I want to tell you that sometimes
Miss,
I stand on the desk,
you
I
totally.
stand up the desk and explain my lesson.
I
Standing
teach
on the desk.
and I have 90 and 95, so I agree with you. It's not a good thing to have this big number. I agree with you. I agree with you totally.
yes, but we are not going to give up. We are not going to surrender to this. We are going to try. So, trying to do whatever we can as teachers because we have a message and we want to convey this message. مش بعيد يعني مش هنتكلم كلام انش، هي كارثه.
طبعا يا
التعليم
مستر انا اقصد ان انا مش بعترض على كلام زميلتي، انا موافقها تماما تماما.
ايوه
انا نفسي بعاني جدا
هي
جدا
وتقول لي تعامل معاهم، يعني تعالى اتعامل معاهم انت.
صح. انا تعبان جدا والله العظيم، انا عندي نفس المشكله والله وتعبان زيها والله العظيم.
في فرق ما بين فكره ان انا ايأس واستسلم وفرق في ان انا احاول اعمل اللي عليا. في حديث انا بعتبره عبقري. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بيقول إذا قامت القيامة وفي يد أحدكم فسيلة فإن استطاع أن يغرسها فليغرسها. أنا عايزك تتصور القيامة بتقول وحضرتك ماسك شجرة صغنطوطة كده، المفترض إن أنت كنت لسه هتزرعها. فكون إن القيامة قامت وأنت لسه ما زرعتهاش، إيه الحكمة في إنك تزرعها؟ مفيش أي حد هيستفيد منها لأنه كله خلاص كله رايح. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بجملة عبقرية بيقول لك فإن استطاع أن يغرسها فليغرسها. عارف ده معناه إيه بالنسبة لي اللي أنا فهمته من الحديث ده؟ إن إحنا نفضل متمسكين بالأمل لآخر لحظة حتى والقيامة بتقوم.
طبعا.
إن الزراعة هنا في حديث النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم مقصود بها الإيه؟ العطاء. التمسك بالخلافة في الأرض والإصلاح. ده على حسب اللي أنا فهمته. تتن حضرتك مصاب. أما بقى الروح الانهزامية اللي بتبقى موجودة عند بعض المدرسين ويقول لك يا عم انا هعمل ايه؟ يقوم يسيب العيال اصلا يخبطوا في بعض وهو ما يشرحش حاجه، ويحط الموبايل على ودنه عشان يخلص مكالماته وهو جوه الفصل، ويجيب كوبايه شاي ومش عارف. لا لا، دي قصه تانية، ما اظنش ان حد فينا.
لا والله
احنا
ما
ايوه
احنا
هنراعوا الامانه يا جماعه،
قدر
هنراعوا
المستطاع والله.
الامانه الا تعالى، لكن هي صعبه طبعا طبعا.
بس مش هشتغل في النهارده.
مستر
انا
حضرتك
عايزه كوبايه بس صغيره مش كبير،
and I use
مش
songs
صغيره ونص معلقه.
control this huge number, and
مم.
sometimes I asked the manager to bring me any computer or laptop to help me, but I sometimes I use my phone and ask them to stop talking. يعني I
مم.
think that using my songs with this number gives me a great result about this.
Okay, and also, do you know the clown and the
Yes.
circus? I
Yes,
think a teacher in this case should be like a clown.
of course.
يعني انا قاعد دلوقتي وانا بتكلم معاكم مش مبسوط بنفسي، حاسس ان احنا رسمي اكتر من اللازم، يعني عمالين نتكلم كلام انشاء كده. لو عملنا كده في الفصول بتاعتنا احنا كده فشلنا. والله احنا دلوقتي جايز احنا مدرسين وقاعدين مركزين وديت الطريقه دي وكذا، لكن العالم كله دلوقتي بيتغير حتى في البرزنتيشنز اللي احنا بنعملها دي، ان احنا نعملها من خلال جيم، اكتيفيتي، سونج، شانت، بازل. يعني ما تجيبليش معلومه كده وتقول لي وتمر هذه العمليه بثلاث مراحل. البري تاسك يعني مرحله ما قبل المهمه. حضرتك كده ده ليكتشر. لو عملت كده جوه الفصل بتاعك انت هتزهق والعيال هيملوا وهينسوا ومش هيتعلموا. حاول بقى تعمل زي ما المس بتقول كده اغنيه، ستوري، رسم. هم يطلعوا يمثلوا، يعني 7 8 منهم هيطلعوا يمثلوا والباقي يقعدوا يتفرجوا عليهم وكده ويجاوبوا. ماشي، اعمل نفسك كلاون.
صح.
كلاون بس
على قد
وانت
ما
بتعمل كلاون خلي الجمهور اللي قدامك يشترك معاك، لان انت لو اعتمدت على طاقتك انت بس، بعد ساعتين 3 مش هيبقى عندك اي طاقه.
صحيح.
واليوم طويل، اليوم طويل، انت شايل حصص كتيره وعندك التزامات كتيره ويوم طويل. حاول
صحيح.
تخلي دورك ان انت to engage them. لو وصلنا للمرحله ديت، لو هم 500 طفل هيسمعوك، بس دي عايزه موهبه جامده بقى.
ايوه
انت
طبعا.
عارف، انت الاطفال الصغيرين لما تحس ان هم قاعدين كده وباصين على الشاشه بتاعت الفيديو جيم وقاعدين كده، ولو حصل ايه بالذي حواليهم ما بيحركوش عينيهم. لو انت
ايوه.
قدرت توصل لمرحله ان انت تبقى زي الفيديو جيم اللي قدامهم ديت، انت كده نجح.
بعد اذن حضرتك يا مستر، بس معلش لو كنت بتكلم، بس انا بقول على حاجه يعني حصلت معايا وحسيت ان هي جابت نتيجه. يعني انا كنت طبعا يأست طبعا اول ما رحت، يعني ايه الاعداد الفظيعه ديت. فبعدين قلت لنفسي طبعا اتكلم انجلش ازاي، يعني look at the board be quiet مش عارف ايه. قلت العيال دي وبعدين اصلا احنا في نجع، ويعني المستويات هناك يعني تحت اندر زيرو يعني. وبعدين قلت لنفسي ايه، طب انا هجرب كده لمده شهر ان انا اديهم الاوامر بالانجلش واشوف هل يستجيبوا ليها ولا لا. ففعلا بعد شهر لقيت كل الصفوف اللي انا بديها وبكلمها، الفصول اللي انا بتكلم فيها بالانجلش وادي فيها اوامر، لقيت الولاد بيتكلموها نفسهم وبيستجيبوا معايا. والفصول اللي ما استعملتش معاها كده بقت صعب عليا ان انا ايه، ان انا اديها لهم تاني. لقيت فعلا ان مع استمرار المدرس واصراره على الحاجه ان هو فعلا ممكن يوصل للهدف اللي هو عايزه.
الله يفتح عليك، ده اللي انا اقصده. A task-based learning story lesson. احنا قلنا that we have 3 stages: the pre-task, the task cycle. التاسك سايكل نفسها بيبقى فيها التاسك والبلاننج والريبورت، والمرحله الاخيره هتبقى اللانجوج فوكس اند فيدباك. عايزين نشوف كده السنتنس اللي موجوده ديت اصلا according to reading them and decide which stage is this. Okay.
مين اللي كان بيتكلم؟
So the activity talking about the story, this is relating to pre-task. Okay.
Yes.
And learners prepare a story.
No.
Is it
Task
three
cycle.
according to which stage in the task cycle is it?
Learners prepare
I
a
think
story. Task two.
Planning.
planning.
It is the task itself.
Task itself.
I want you to notice the title فوق. بصوا كده العنوان فوق ايه؟ The task based learning story lesson. الدرس كله عبارة عن ستوري. فلما يبقى learners هيبقى learners prepare a story. This is the task. And learners identify what happened and the roles of the characters. دي برضو تبع الايه؟ التاسك سايكل.
Teacher provides feedback. طبعا أكيد في الفيدباك.
السبوكسمان بريزنت. طبعا لو هنقسم الاولاد الى جروبس هيبقى each group has a spokesman or a spokeswoman هيقوم يقول what they have done in that task. ده بيسموه السبوكسمان. كويس. ده هيبقى في الريبورتنج يعني. طبعا في teachers provide feedback. ده هيبقى في اللانجوج فوكس والفيدباك. الشكل ده بيبين لحضراتكم the three stages of the TPL اللي هي التاسك بيست ليرنينج. المرحله اللي هي البري تاسك ديت عباره عن انتروداكشن زي ما اتفقنا، خلاش تاخد منك وقت طويل. والمرحله اللي بعد كده هي التاسك نفسها. التاسك بقى اللي هي learners do the task whether in pairs or small groups while the teachers monitors. المرحله ديت خلاص التيتشر خلص هنا الانترودكشن، ودلوقتي هو بيتابع الاولاد وهم بيعملوا التاسك، ما بيتدخلش بس بيبص عليهم. ماشي. اثناء ما هم شغالين learners prepare to report to the whole class. مطلوب من كل جروب هيطلعوا يقولوا او في الاخر هيقولوا هم عملوا ايه في التاسك، هيشرحوا للباقيين. ده بيسموه البلاننج سواء كان oral or written. how they did the task. ماشي. بعد كده ممكن one of them او some groups present their reports to the class. يعني هيبدا بقى يكلم الفصل كله من خلال الريبورت اللي هم عملوه. ديت المرحله بتاعت التاسك. يجي بقى بقيه الدور بتاع التيتشر اللي هو عطى انتروداكشن فوق، هيجي تحت هنا يعمل analysis. learners examine and discuss specific features. the teacher conducts practice. هيبدا يعمل practice على الجزء المهم في الايه؟ في التاسك ده. اوكي. يبقى احنا we have three stages: pre-task, task cycle, and language focus. طيب, what are the pros and cons of the TBL model? The TBL has been described as PPP on its head. There are three main stages, but the language focus comes at the end. The main focus is on the task. هناك في ال PPP كنا بنركز على الجزء بتاع البرزنتيشن في الأول. ده هيبقى الجزء بتاع اللانجوج هيكون في الآخر في المرحلة الأخيرة، بس هما الاثنين متقسمين إلى 3 stages. Okay. هنا هيبقى التركيز كله على التاسك itself. How students can carry out the task and how can they plan and report about the task. طبعا بما ان كنا بنتكلم على اللارج نمبرز وكده، من ضمن العيوب او الدروباكس it takes a long time. طبعا عشان اقسم الاولاد الى جروبس واديهم الوقت ان هم يعملوا التاسك، ده هياخد معايا وقت طويل. learners may not have enough language knowledge. ده برضو ممكن يكون عائق. that it draws on learners knowledge and language uses authentic language and is a bottom up approach. إذا قلنا الثانية كانت عبارة عن توب داون، التيتشر هو اللي بيبدأ، ده هيبقى العكس. فدي عبارة عن بوتtom اب. يعني الستودنت هو اللي بيبدأ
begin first.
وفي الاخر التيتشر بيدي اللانجوج فوكس عكس الايه من حيث الترتيب، لكن هما الاثنين متقسمين الى 3 ستيجز يعتبروا نفس الايه المراحل. ممكن نعمل البري ستورمينج في الانترودكشن. For example, in pairs, learners list all the people in a family. لو انا هطلب منهم مثلا ان هم يتكلموا عن الفاميلي بتاعتهم. This gives learners thinking time and the teacher can see what learners know and don't know. ممكن نخش بعد كده على الاوردرنج او الكلاسيفاينج حسب التاسك اللي انا عايزهم يعملوها. البروبلم سولفينج، الشيرنج بيرسونال اكسبيرينس، كومبيرنج، كل دي حاجات ممكن يقوم بيها الستودنت اثناء التاسك. اما التي تي تي ال 3 تي تي اللي هي عباره عن تيست، تيتش اند تيست. الفكره ببساطه we start by giving the students a form. ممكن ندي للاولاد فورم زي ده كده، في بيانات مطلوب منهم هم يعملوا تشيكينج او يكتبوا، يبقى هم كده اكنهم في تيست. اوكي، فمثلا ناخد منهم داتا، السور نيم، النيم، الديت اوف بيرث، الناشوناليتي اند سو اون. كويس. بعد كده دي مرحله التيست الاولانيه. لا لاحظت انا ان هم عملوا اخطاء وفي حاجات ما عرفوش يجاوبوها. The learners have difficulties doing the task and cannot make correct questions. For example, they cannot answer the question, when do you want to start? For example, the teacher notes the language problems and after the activity models and drills the correct. بص هنا انا هبدا الاحظ الاخطاء اللي هم وقعوا فيها وما عرفوش يعملوها في التست اللي انا عملته. بعد كده اخد الاخطاء ديت واشرحها لهم. The learners do drills and language practice ويبداوا يتمرنوا عليها. بعد كده the teacher يجي راجع تاني بقى asks the learners to make their own language course form. فاهمين الفكره؟ يبقى التي الاولانيه انا ما شرحتش كتيتشر، لا انا اختبرت الاولاد لقيتهم مش عارفين يجاوبوا حاجات معينه، رحت انا عامل لها تيتشنج، شرحتها، وبعد ما شرحتها طلبت منهم ان هم يجاوبوا تاني فعملت لهم تستين. ماشي؟
اوكي.
And why بيقول لي هنا بقى why would the teacher follow this approach? Can you see any benefits؟ طب يا ترى الفكره دي بتاعت التي تي تي فيها اي مميزات؟
It can be beneficial with the clever students and high level students only.
ماشي، بس لو حضرتك if you had a very simple test، يعني لو انا عندي الويك ستودنتس عملت لهم حاجه بسيطه خالص، مش بالضروره تكون فيها صعوبات في اللانجوج مثلا او كده، الميزه اللي فيها ان هي it helps learners to think. مش قاعدين ان هم يبقوا يعني teacher
not boring.
يعني وفي الوقت نفسه كمان مش passive receivers، يعني مش هتبقى وظيفتهم اللي هم الاستقبال يعني.
It helps the teacher to put his hand on the weak points in the student.
ايوه، ومن ضمن المميزات كمان انها it helps teacher to know what he or she should be focusing on. بدل ما اشرح كل الدرس، لا ما هم جاوبوا نص الحاجات، فانا بعمل فوكس على الحاجات اللي هم ما عرفوهاش، فدي تعتبر ميزه. Okay,
The lesson is boring also.
Again, sorry, I didn't hear you.
Students will not get bored.
Yes, because they are part of the learning process. طول ما الطفل اصلا او المتعلم جزء من عمليه التعلم، مش بس هو قاعد يسمع زي اكنه هو كرسي او سبوره، فالتعليم بالنسبه له هيبقى لذيذ. لكن تخيل نفسك لو انا دلوقتي مطرب يا جماعه، لو انا مطرب وبغني لكم اغاني حلوه من الاغاني التراثيه القديمه والحاجات الجديده والحاجات المشخلعه والحاجات العاطفيه والحاجات الوطنيه، بس الساعه بقت دلوقتي داخله في ساعتين حضرتك وانت بتغني، انا زهقت، انا صح ولا لا؟
Yeah.
الفكره كلها انا مش عايز افضل بسمع بس، يعني انت صوتك حلو بس انا مش عايز افضل اسمع. طب ليه حضرتك ما طلبتش مني ان انا اعمل معاك كورال كده واشارك انا بحته فطول ما العمليه هات وخد، العمليه فيها انت تعمل وانا، فهنا هيبقى في سكسس. لكن فكره ان انا اقعد اسمع الحد ده ايه يعني؟ صوته حلو، بعد شويه هعمل. طب دمه خفيف، ما انا بعد شويه هزهق. الفكره ان انا I need to be part of it. وكل ما هتخلي الطلبه بتوعك do not know what is going to happen next، ايه الخطوه اللي جايه، يعني ما يبقاش حضرتك ما تبقاش open book. You need to be unexpected. كل ما هتبقى anonymous unexpected يعني untold، هيبقى دايما في جديد. طبعا ديت زي ما قلت لك هيبقى جزء منها خاص بالتعلم اللي احنا بنعمله، وجزء تاني خاص بالموهبه اللي حضرتك بتتمتع بيها. طيب why would the teacher follow this approach? Can you see any benefits؟ حضراتكم قلتوا to find out what the learners know or can remember. احنا قلنا من خلال التست هعرف الاولاد محتاجين ايه. This is a good review strategy. ده يعتبر كده مراجعه يعني. And is useful when preparing for an assessment or end of unit. طبعا خاصة لما يبقى في نظام امتحانات بقى اللي انتوا عارفين عندنا في مصر يعني وكده. The teacher sets a task for learners to complete in class, then could be a freer practice activity, semi-controlled or controlled. The teacher monitors to observe whether learners are using the correct language. During feedback, learners check each other's work. This encourages peer teaching. يعني هو بالفعل الطلبة هيبقوا متفاعلين طول الوقت، حتى في مرحلة الايه ال find mistakes and correcting each other. What would happen in this situation? During the first role play, all the learners show that they know the language and don't role play very well. There are no major language problems. بيقول لي لو في situation زي كده حصل معاك. During the first role play, all the learners show that they know the language. طلعوا كلهم عارفينها. And do the role play very well. يبقى كده ما عنديش انا language problems. صح ولا لا؟
صح.
يعني معناها في الحاله اللي زي كده اقدر اعمل ايه؟
انقل على حاجه جديده بقى.
بالظبط كده. طب لو during the first role play about half of the learners have difficulties with the language but the other half do not. ممكن استخدم النص اللي عارف ان هو يعرف النص اللي مش عارف، وديت بيسموها البير teaching collaboration. كده حضرتك بتعلمهم حاجتين، ان هم to help each other، ده بيسموه collaboration and has communication. في الوقت نفسه بنمي عندهم فكره
cooperative learning.
We can get some leaders.
ممكن استخدم بعض الطلبه اللي هم الشطار دولت كليدرز، ان هم يعرفوا الطلبه التانيين. بس طبعا ده بيبقى عايز جو بقى من الاكسبتنس. احنا محتاجين الاول النفسيات تكون ايه؟ بتقبل. في اطفال صغيرين لا ما بيقبلوش ده، في ناس كبار ما بيقبلوش ده، ازاي ده يعلمني؟
In prep stage, we do this and it's effective.
والله ده يبقى شيء رائع.
Yes.
It also saves the efforts of the teacher.
طيب the lexical approach. The lexical approach. احنا اتفقنا lexical يعني has something relating to words, the meaning, the vocabulary. طبعا what comes to your mind when you listen to the word vocabulary؟ أول حاجة بتخطر في بالنا إيه لما بنسمع كلمة vocabulary؟
New words.
New words. Is it words, separate words, or words in context?
It should be words in context.
Is it a word or a phrase, a group of words? Is it a word or an idiom?
Yes, sometimes it can be this or this.
Yes. All this has to do with the lexical approach. The lexical approach is a broad meaning of using vocabulary. So if we talked about three, if you have a look at the word make a mistake, the verb make always goes with mistake. Why don't we say do a mistake? Yesterday I did a lot of mistakes. Is
Okay,
that usage correct? No, no, it isn't.
so make a mistake.
No, make a
Yes, it's make a mistake. This
What's
is
a clock
called fixed phrase.
phrase? Fixed
Yes,
phrase.
it's a phrase that always goes, the words goes with each other to give a meaning. Okay, it is a collocation.
Collocation.
Make a mistake. This is called collocation. You know the word collocation means?
تلازمات لفظية.
yes.
Yes, متلازمات. يعني two words connected together. Make a mistake. Have a shower.
Do homework.
Okay, do homework.
Have breakfast.
Get ready.
Okay, and how are you? This is called a lexical unit. And lexical unit means a group of words that are used to give a specific meaning and they are common in use. Here are some examples of the verb take in different contexts. And I want you to decide which meaning the verb take gives in each sentence. When we say, every morning I take a shower. Take here means
Have a
Have.
shower.
have
Have
a
a
shower.
shower.
Have.
Yes, means bathe. The training takes place on Monday. What does it mean?
Happen.
Happens.
I take it you don't understand because this is incorrect.
I think.
I think
I think I understand. My husband took me out for dinner on my birthday.
Invited.
Invited.
Accompanied.
Okay. Do you take after your mother or
Look
father?
after.
okay.
Look
Look
after.
after.
Look after.
Look after.
Look
على
after.
فكرة
No.
من
Look
الأخطاء
like. Look like.
look like excellent. احنا بص معظم المدرسين ساعة ما يسمعوا كلمة تيك افتر يقول لك ايوه بتساوي لوك افتر عشان هي بس افتر يعني. لكن لوك افتر يعني يعتني بيه وتيك افتر بمعنى يشبه.
Look
اه
انا
like.
هنا بس
Look
اقول لك
like.
هو
look
هو
like.
شبه اكتر ولا شبه منطق؟
Like you.
اه
you
Yes.
take after. بس هي على
اوكي
فكرة من الحاجات اللي هي فعلا دايما بتبقى تريكي. احنا متعودين دايما look after يهتم او يعتني. لكن take after معناها يشبه حاجة.
Look like.
طيب when it comes to learning lexical approach لو عايزين نطبق الليكسيكال approach we have three stages. واضح ان كل approach منهم بيمر ب3 مراحل. Okay, hypothesis, experiment and observe. Which one is you think the first? Here it comes.
hypothesis. Hypothesis.
Hypothesis means to what does it mean to what does it mean to hypothesize? Hypothesize.
Suppositions.
Yes, it means to have some definition or supposition in your mind. انك تحط تخيل او تحط فرضيه. عارفين الفرضيه؟
أيوه.
يعني
Yes.
to have something in mind, to have a definition of something. It
تمام.
comes after observation or before observation. يعني انا هبص على التكست and try to observe. صح ولا لا؟
Observe first.
It comes first.
Yes,
We
observe.
need to observe the lexical or the collocation or the fixed phrases or the idioms, and then try to hypothesize the meaning. That right?
Right.
And the third stage is to experiment. Try to use it. Try to understand. Try to practice using it. So when it comes to studying vocabulary, we have 3 stages of this approach: observe, hypothesize, and finally experiment. I want you to read these 6 sentences and decide whether they have to do with the lexical approach or not. If they are relating to this approach, you can say it's okay, yes, a tick, or no if it's not.
Learners listen to a recording of 2 people arranging to meet and highlight a phrase. Highlight phrases.
It's not okay.
Do you think when learners listen to a recording of 2 people arranging to meet and highlight phrases, this has to do with the approach of lexical test or not?
Yes, Mr.
Yes. The teacher underlines and drills polite phrases used in telephone conversations.
Yes.
Yes, it's okay.
Yes. The learners correct mistakes in sentences and use the sentence to make a dialogue.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think this is yes. Because here the teacher is correcting mistakes
It's
in
yes,
sentences.
it's concerned to grammar.
Mhm. The learners
No.
change verbs into the past
No,
simple. No.
no.
The learners choose phrases from a list to use in a role play about asking for directions.
Yes.
Yes, it's okay.
Yes. The teacher presents model verbs for possibility and drill sentence using may, might, and could.
No. No.
No,
No.
No. Yes,
concerned
it's
to
no.
grammar.
Yes. Say no.
Yes.
Okay. Learners can be encouraged to note or observe language. Here, this is the wrapping up of the strategy. ملخص يعني. أول بنبدأ بالobservation بتاعت اللانجوج وبعد كده الهايبوثيسيس اللي هي فكرة الفرضية أو الديفينيشن وفاينلي الاكسبيرمنت. المقصود بالاكسبيرمنت finally the teacher arranges a controlled or free activity where learners practice the language. The activities can range from matching and gap fills to role plays and writing. This stage provides the experiment with the language. And we have the total physical response. This is a very important technique. We have the TPR. The first letters here, TPR, means total physical response. It means that the TPR approach was developed as a result of watching small children learn their play. بصوا بقى، ده بقى اللي متاخد من الناتشرال واي. الأطفال الصغيرة وهي بتتعلم الفيرست لانجوج بتاعتها، ساعات الطفل الصغير ما بيعرفش يعمل فول سنتنس، فممكن تلاقيه بيشاور على بقه كده ويقول ايه مام فود جعان، بس ما بيعرفش يعمل فول سنتنس. صح ولا لا؟
صح.
Yes.
ساعات بيقول الجمله بس التنس بتاعها غلط. عمو هو انت مش انت كنت قلت ان انت هتيجي تزورنا امبارح؟ طب ازاي لسه هتيجي تزورنا وازاي امبارح؟ يعني هو طفل صغير مش عارف يركب التنسز. قالوا ان احنا ممكن نعمل التي بي ار ده كابروتش للليرنينج، وهيبقى جميل جدا ان احنا نخلي الاولاد يستخدموا الصوت والصوره والحركه مع في تعلم اللغه. ازاي؟ بص بقى، بيقول لك TPR is based on the idea that people learn language first by writing. TPR is based on the idea that the language learning should be difficult and stressed. لا ده هو هنا بيدي لك ستيتمنت بيقول لك انت تقول agree ولا disagree، لان طبعا مش ده الديفينيشنز خالص يعني. الاول خلينا نفهم التي بي ار وبعد كده نشوف الاكسرسايز ده حضرتك agree ولا disagree. التي بي ار، تخيلوا انتوا لو if you looked at this picture the teacher and the student. هنا التيتشر will say something, the students will act something. يعني الفكره كلها يا جماعه، عارفين لما فاكرين الاغنيه الاطفال الصغيرين بيقولوها touch your nose, touch your head.
head, shoulders, knees and toes.
ايوه، يبقى معنى ان الاولاد في الوقت نفسه هيسمع اللانجوج. يعني وانا بقول له touch your hair هو سامعني، واكبر دليل ان هو فاهمني صح ان هو he will or she will act the instructions. انا مش عايزه to repeat after me، امال انا عايزه يعمل ايه؟ to act physically. عشان كده سموها physical response. يبقى انا لما اقول للاولاد sit down وهم ينفذوا الانستراكشنز بتاعتي، يعني معناها كده ان هم فاهمين اللغه، سامعينها وفاهمينها، صح ولا لا؟
Yes.
وده اللي بيحصل مع التعلم الطبيعي للاطفال الصغيرين. شوف الطفل الصغير هو لسه عنده 9 شهور وعنده سنه، مامته تقول له طب خلاص اسكت، هو مش فاهم الجمله كلها بس بيسكت. ليه؟ لانه عنده المخزون السمعي. المشكله عنده ان هو لسه بس جهاز الكلام بتاعه ما اكتملش. هو سامع كويس، طب ادي سكر لعمه يجي بايسك، صح ولا لا؟ يعني بياخد الانستراكشنز يفهمها وينفذها، بس علشان يقول جمل ما بيعرفش، صح ولا لا؟ مش ده اللي بيحصل مع الليرنرز؟ لو احنا بنعلم الاولاد اللغه بقى بنفس الطريقه ديت، انا مش هبقى مستعجل على ان هو يمسك القلم ويكتب، انا مش هبقى مستعجل ان هو يمسك الكتاب ويقرا، لا انا كل اللي يهمني ان هو يتحرك، يربط ما بين اللانجوج اللي هو بيسمعها والاكشنز اللي هو هيقوم بيها. وصل لكم بالفكره دي يا جماعه؟ ده بيسموه TPR Total Physical Response. تعالوا بقى نشوفوا بقى يا ترى agree ولا disagree. TPR means Total Physical Response، يبقى agree، صح؟ The TPR approach was developed as a result of watching small children learn their first language.
Yes.
Agree?
Agree.
TPR is based on the idea that people learn languages first by writing.
No.
Disagree. Disagree.
حد فيكم يا جماعه سنه كبير شويه فاكر لما كانوا بيودونا المدرسه عشان ناخدوا الف ب، واول حاجه كنا بنعملوها كانوا يسطروا لنا الكراسه ويكتب لك حرف الالف وحرف الباء، وطبعا واحنا صغيرين لا كنا عارفين يعني ايه الالف ويعني ايه الباء، احنا بنقلد وخلاص. ده كان الاعتقاد ان الليرنينج بتاع اللانجوج بيبدا بالرايتنج. لكن دلوقتي لو انتوا خدتوا بالكم من النظام الجديد بتاع المرحله الابتدائيه، التركيز كله على الايه؟
listening and speaking.
الاول listening، صح؟ ويفضلوا بقى listening. عشان كده كان لو انتوا فاكرين في المراحل الاوليه تعليمات ان الاطفال الصغيرين ما يبقاش معاهم كراسات اصلا. فاكرين حاجه زي كده؟
Yes.
ان كان في متابعين بيبصوا كده يخشوا عشان يقول لك ايه، طب ازاي دولت اصلا يقول لك كده؟ ما ينفعش، ان هو كان التركيز كله على الليسننج. طيب وشويه هيبدا بقى مع الليسننج يعمل ايه؟ بوينت، يشاور، ماشي، يعني يختار. لما نتقدم شويه listen and repeat، صح ولا لا؟ طيب بيقول لي TPR is based on the idea that language learning should be difficult and stressful.
disagree.
disagree.
طبعا العكس TPR is popular with younger learners and beginners.
Agree.
Agree.
Agree. TPR cannot be used with adult learners.
Disagree.
هي ممكن
Disagree.
تستخدم معاهم هي بس هي اساسا للyoung learners.
Mm.
When we physically respond to what we hear, we use the left side of the brain.
Agree. Agree.
The TPR approach stresses that learners should not be forced to speak the language until they are ready.
Yes.
Agree.
Agree. Lessons in TPR are organized around verbs, and teachers give commands based on the verbs and vocabulary to be learned in that lesson.
Agree.
Agree.
Agree. Grammar is learned
Agree.
inductively. It's not taught.
Yes.
طبعا احنا عرفنا inductive وال
Deductive.
TPR is most other approaches and is most often used for using new vocabulary. بالكم ان الابروتشز الثانيه ممكن تاخد التي بي ار ده وتنفذه لان هو حاجه حلوه قوي ان المتعلم يبقى في حاله من الحركه وهو بيتعلم الفوكاب. In a TPR lesson, there are no materials or books.
Agree.
طبعا ديت الإجابات بتاعتنا زي ما قلنا صح؟
Yes.
خدوا بالكم الجزء بتاع السايد the left side of the brain and when we respond دايما الكتابه والتفكير يا جماعه هي اللي لها علاقه بالجانب الايسر اما الفيزيكال ريسبونس دايما بتبقى لها علاقه بالجانب الايمن. بصوا بقول لكم هنا no according to TPR language learning must engage the right side of the brain. دايما تعلم اللغه المخ عندنا فيه اصلا الجزء الايسر ده خاص شويه بالحسابات والحاجات اللي هي الجرافيك وكده، اما الحاجات اللي هي الخاصه بتعلم اللغات والكلام دايما هتلاقيه في الجانب الايمن. Physical movement is controlled primarily by the right hemisphere and is the couple of movement with the language comprehension the key to language. يبقى دايما الجزء بتاع اللغه بيكون في الرايت سايد اوف
ايوه
اوكي. اخر حاجه بالنسبه لنا بقى ان شاء الله النهارده الجايدد ديسكفري اللي هي الجي دي، وديت اصلا من خلال اسمها كده تقدروا تخمنوا.
ورحمة الله وبركاته.
هنا في الجايدد ديسكفري is an inductive approach. هي تبع الاندكتيف لان انا مش هتبقى معتمده على التيتشر، لا ده انا هدي الاولاد هم اللي هيفكروا هم اللي هيعملوا. The teacher provides example of a language item and helps the learners find the rules themselves. يعني انا ممكن اديهم فيديو صغير يتفرجوا عليه وابدا اسالهم، يبقى ده inductive. ابدا اديهم مثال واحط خط تحت حاجه اقول لهم what is the rule. احنا هنا مستخدمين الاثبات ولا النفي، هنا مستخدمين الاكتيف ولا الباسيف، يبقى ده فكره الاندكتيف. It is valued by many important as an important approach because it encourages learner participation. اي ابروتش يا جماعه هيبقى فيه الليرنرز هم الفوكس وهم اللي بيعملوا البارتيسيبيشن ثق ان هو هيبقى ناجح. ماشي. اما التيتشر هو اللي هيبقى الفوكس ده ما بينفعش غير مع الطلبه الضعاف قوي والفطره لحد ما يشدوا حيلهم. بس ده خلاصه الكلام اللي احنا بنتكلموا فيه. اوكي، حاسس ان انا اخرتكم النهارده.
أخذنا مستر.
Thank you very much.
I thank you all very much. And if you have any question, just in a minute, okay, just ask me if you have any questions.
جوجل كلاس روم احنا مش عارفين ندخلها، عايزين بس حاجه اسهل لان انا مش عارفه ادخل.
على حاجه، بصي انا هوريكي دلوقتي قد ايه هو سهل اهو. بصي مش احنا دلوقتي مع بعض، شايفه الشاشه بتاعتي اهوت.
اوكي، انا ممكن ادخل الرابط حالا يعني، بس انا دخلت التليفون نمبر ما نفعش، دخلت
هتلاقي بس في مشكله عندك في الاكونت. بص يا ستي، ادي اسمه اهو جوجل كلاس روم. بمنتهى البساطه احنا
دخلت من الرابط اللي حضرتك بعته مش من هنا. انا
ايوه،
دخلت من الرابط.
ما انت اول ما هتضغطي على الرابط هيدخلك على هنا، بس مش هيدخلك على كل الكلاس ديت. لا، احنا الكلاس بتاعنا هنا اسمه ايه اهو، البرج اهو انتيتي بي تاج.
بس ما دخلناش على ده يا مستر، ما دخلناش على
لا مش
مش عارفين ندخل اصلا.
مش هيدخلكم على ده
ودخلنا وقال ادخل رقم، ادخل بريدك، ادخل.
والبريد مش نافع والتليفون مش نافع.
طب بصي، كل دولت ناس دخلوا مهمات. انا هوريكي هنا عدد الناس اللي موجودين. انت ادي بيبل اهو، بصي 22 ستودنت.
اوكي، انا عموما هنحاول تاني لغايه المره الجايه يعني ان شاء الله.
عشان
بس
كده انا بس بوريلك مين. المره اللي فاتت كنا 22. اقول لك الغالبيه اللي كانوا موجودين اهم داخلين دلوقتي. طب ما انا طلبت
جماعة لو حد بس مش سامعين حاجة معلش. الصوت في حد فاتح الفويس بتاعه واحنا مش سامعين.
في حد فاتح الفويس، بس لو كده يقفله يا جماعه. اعمل ميوتنج اهو. بص حضراتكم، ادي الماتيريال اللي احنا شيرناها المره اللي فاتت. ده الفيديو بتاع السيشن اللي فات. وده السؤال اللي انا كنت بساله لحضراتكم، ايه الحاجات اللي عجبتك وايه الحاجات اللي تحب تقترحها. والويل اوف نيمز بعت لكم اللينك بتاع السبيننج ويل بتاعت الاسماء ديت اللي احنا شفناها المره اللي فاتت. والباوربوينت بتاع التاج الماتيريال. وايه كمان، الكتاب اللي مقرر، يعني الكتاب اللي هو البريتش كونسل بعتينه اهو. بص بمجرد انك تضغط بس كده هتعمل داونلود للكتاب على طول، هيفتح معاك. ماشي. الميزه في الجوجل كلاس روم ان انت في اي وقت تقدر تخش تلاقي الماتيريال بتاعتك موجوده كلها. يعني انا دلوقتي حاجه جاي بعد ما نخلصه ان شاء الله اجي عامل كرييت واجي اضيف بقى الفيديو بتاع النهارده. ماشي. المره اللي جايه نعيشنا يبقى الفيديو، نحط الفيديو، يبقى دايما حاجتنا موجوده هنا. لو انت جيت بعد سنه هتلاقي كل الحاجات بتاعتك بالترتيب. ديت ميزه كويسه خالص. بالاضافه ان انا لو حبيت اعمل لكم اي نوع من الاكسرسايز او حاجه، بقول لكم يا جماعه خش برضو على الجوجل كلاس روم، خش على الكلاس ورك بتاعك، هتلاقي فيه امتحان مثلا او هتلاقي فيه تدريب. هتلاقي العنوان بتاعك كده قدامك زي ما مكتوب هنا انتيتي بي تاج، هتلاقي مكتوب فيه هنا تيست مثلا او كويز، تيجي انت ضاغط عليه وتمتحن. معلش جربي تاني وشوفي الاكونت. ولو كده ما تستنيش لحد الاسبوع اللي جاي يعني وكده، لا احنا اكتبي لي على الواتساب انا دخلت خلاص المشكله اتحلت، لا انا مش عارفه ادخل، عشان نقدر نساعد بعض. ماشي. Do you have any other questions?
Thank you.
نعمل
Thank
stop